I actually watched the Purdue Penn State game, and I had this thought, and I kind of want to know your opinion on this. So Tyrone Tracy didn't have a great game against with Purdue, but Charlie Jones really showed out. Now, if I'm an Iowa wide receiver, especially after this game, I'm looking at that and going, maybe I'm at the wrong school. And that's what scares me, is that we're not, I think Arlen Bruce is a great asset to us, along with Keegan Johnson. And if we have another year like we did last year where we can't target our wide receivers and get them the ball, what's stopping them? Especially with NIL. I know there's a new transfer rule. They kind of made it a little harder or less desirable to enter the transfer portal. But at some point, you're going to start losing some talent on some weapons on the outside. And then what are you stuck with? So
and last thing, and I'll let you go, Alex, but if you follow me on Twitter, hope you do. But I tweeted out during the game that, anybody who wants to criticize Charlie Jones, you see people, again, it's the same people that defend, find a way to defend the offense, or to find the way to defend Kirk, or find a way to defend Brian. When you have a situation where you're defending Charlie Jones not because he left, because everybody has a right to leave, but when he left after spring, he left us high and dry. If you're Charlie Jones and you're told during the off season before spring practice, Charlie, we're going to make some changes. You're being told maybe the same things that the fans are being told, that there's going to be an open competition, and you go through spring and you go through maybe just take the one open practice that we saw in the spring where there were not equal snaps against equal competition. There was not a fair QB competition, at least not in the open practice. If I'm Charlie Jones, I'm sitting like a fan would I'm sitting here and saying, nothing has changed. I came into this spring under false pretenses, and I have the ability to, and I have the right to explore my options. And I don't blame Charlie Jones one bit. If the roles were reversed and Iowa had gotten a star wide receiver, any position late in the summer or spring, Iowa fans would be rejoicing. It's a sad excuse. Charlie Jones made the right decision. Anybody wants to say Charlie Jones was the fourth or fifth best wide receiver on the Iowa team, as I said, they were saying that, Alex.
No, I'm saying he is not. He was. I think he was going to be the number one, if
Correct.
Not number two. If people were saying it's an excuse to try to make him feel better, he was not the fourth or fifth best wide receiver. Definitely not
Keegan Johnson or Arlen Bruce. But I'm just saying that's an excuse. And now we're seeing I understand Purdue throws the ball all over the yard, and that's a different offense. But what we saw from Charlie Jones Thursday was impressive, and what we saw today is self-explanatory.
When you look at the offensive skill players we've had in the state of Iowa over the past 10 years, most of them are going elsewhere. They don't want to come to Iowa because we don't have an offense that's going to really show their skill set. And you alluded to the transfer portal earlier when it comes to quarterback play. We need to get into the transfer portal and try to pull guys to the offensive side of the ball, but we don't have an offense that it's going to get them exposure to the next level or get them reps that are going to get them looked at for the next level. It's not our offense. So nobody wants to come here because we're a run first offense where we don't pass it. I look at Tyrone Tracy and Charlie Jones transferring out. I'm sure your previous caller saw the same thing. Tyrone Tracy didn't have, much of a game against Penn State. But no. Charlie Jones lit it up for over 110, maybe 120 yards with eight.
Didn't he have 150 yards?
Probably. I stopped watching that once he got to 100 yards because I'm just thinking to myself, here's a guy that we lost that left our offense. And granted, the quarterback, I guess, is a childhood friend of his, but more so, if he stayed at Iowa, he might get 3 or 4 catches a game for 47 yards, but then have a few punt returns. And who wants to play there if you're trying to go beyond college football?
Yeah, anybody who blames Charlie Jones is too much of a homer to help themselves.
Right.
And that's fine. They have every right to have their opinions and whatnot, but it's just funny the people on Twitter that I even see some of the media, and I'm not going to name names, but some of the Iowa media, not most, but some of the Iowa media that latch on to a narrative that is fan created and that gets under fans' skin just like that, or just agrees with those notions that are completely ridiculous. Like, he did Iowa wrong by leaving when he did. And, that's a discussion for a different day. But I'm in agreement with you. There's no reason to blame Charlie Jones for wanting to leave. He did what's best for him. And clearly, you can say, I love – now, that's the other thing that we've heard since that Charlie Jones game on Thursday. I've heard so many Iowa fans, well, he took the L. How's that L feel? Who cares? The guy's trying to go to the league.
Yep.
You listen, if anybody wants to sit here and talk about one side of the ball not meaning something, then it should be Iowa fans, because they have an elite defense and they fall back on that defense year after year because the offense is inept. Well, Purdue fans can do the opposite. And yes, they don't win at a rate that Iowa wins. Jeff Brom's not won nearly as many games. He's not been employed there nearly as long as Kirk Ferentz. But my point is, these kids, their goal is to play football and make money. And Charlie Jones is not only more marketable to the league, he's more marketable from an NIL standpoint, being a guy who can actually produce numbers like he produced Thursday night against Penn State. So, no, absolutely don't blame him. And this was just evidence, unfortunately. Even I, and you listen to my show, you watch the show, Vincent, you know that I've said since December that I didn't have any real reason to believe the offense was going to take a big step forward. I didn't. I've never, ever claimed that I thought it was going to, but I also tried to at least wait and see, right? Let's just wait and see. And that's all you can do. And that's why there were so many boos today in that stadium, because fans, a lot of fans, not all of them, but a lot of fans were in that same mindset of, God, I just don't have any confidence, but let's just wait and see. Maybe they'll shock me. And then when it's worse than it was when you saw it last, it's like, oh, crap, man. Crap.
Yep.
And I'll say something else here, and I don't mean to take over here, but
you're good.
I'll just say this, Vincent. You probably heard me a couple weeks ago, and I was told on good authority that Iowa's open scrimmage, they're not their open, their private scrimmage they had 2 weeks ago, that the offense gained exactly 2 first downs against the second and third team defense all day, and they played 2 whole quarters, and people were like, well, that's just a bad day, I hope.
Nope.
And that's exactly what we just saw today. That's a repeat of what they had in the close scrimmage 2 weeks ago. So I don't know. I don't know what to say, but you're right. It's not a shock that elite players on offense don't want to play here. And Iowa's very fortunate that they have Sam Laporta and everybody on defense, because those guys, Phil Parker should be making double what he's making. He's earned that.